combined with flames sprouting from its top. This is the town's cenotaph, or war memorial. It stands in the Prince Edward Square on the site of the Gorsedd Circle erected for the 1864 National Eisteddfod. Eisteddfod is a cultural festival where musicians, singers, poets meet in a spirit of friendly rivalry to decide who's the best, and the members of the Gorsedd Circle uphold the druidic traditions of the ancient bards and poets. The 700 hotels in Llandudno, the ones here on the seafront, were the earliest to be built, the first of which is the St George's Hotel here on the Rats. It was opened in 1854 and incorporated Wales's first water-powered elevator, or lift. Famous guests over the years have included Sir Winston Churchill, Otto von Bismarck, Napoleon III, Benjamin Disraeli, and William Gladstone. As we've travelled along the seafront, have you noticed the lack of garish and bright facades of these hotels? That's because the owners are required to use pastel-coloured charts provided by the powerful Muslim estate when choosing a colour for the outside of their office. The Imperial Hotel on our right was once home to the king of our friend, the taxman. The headquarters of the government's Inland Revenue Department was based in Llandudno in 1940. The Marine Hotel was home to Queen Elizabeth roaming 5 weeks late at night while she was here recuperating. And we'll hear more about her in the film. The large Queen Hotel Promenade on our right was opened in 1860. It was taken over 2 years later by Dr. Henry Thomas, who used it as the town Lord Piper's establishment, hence the name Piper. Dr. Thomas offered a treatment called the picturesque and some of his medicine when it's called on our right is the North Wales Theatre, venue Conwy, opened in 1994 by His Royal Highness Prince Charles, the Prince of Wales. It has one of the largest stages in the UK and has seating for 3,000 people. A new conference centre completes the project on its site. If visibility is good, you may see the many wind turbines out in Irish Sea to your left. This is Greater Hall, with 160 turbines 10 miles offshore. It is Wales's largest wind farm, with a capacity to generate 576 megawatts and power for 400,000 homes. And in the distance, you can see the little boat. It is 141 meters long and a popular sightseeing joking to heights. ahead of us are the travelling pool and lifeboat station. The open space to the right is what Avon Field, home to the Avon Bar. Now arriving at stop number 2, the Avon Park. Please check with your brochure for the times of our buses. This is the part of town known as Llandudno. This was a mostly residential area developed at the turn of the 19th century. Notice the brick tile roofs rather than the older grey slate ones. The largest building in Llandudno was St Paul's Church. It was built at the beginning of the last century and is dedicated to the memory of the Duke of Clarence, son Edward VII and Queen Alexandra, and grandson of Queen Victoria. Many suspected him of being none other than Jack the Ripper, the notorious Victorian murderer. If this is true, it seems rather strange to have his name associated with a church. The Duke of Clarence died in 1892 at the age of just 28. Ahead of us on our left is Queen's Park, named after Queen Victoria. However, one road down to the left is called Romania Drive, named after another queen, Elizabeth of Romania, who stayed here for several weeks in 1890. She was a noted author of romantic novels, and on a visit to the National Eisteddfod, she was honoured with acceptance into the corset of the Bards with her pen name Carmen Silva. During her stay, she quickly grew to love reading and was always very complimentary of the standard of hospitality in Wales. Indeed, she was so fond of Wales, she actually learned some Welsh. When she left, she described on the note how beautiful even looked in Welsh. And to this very day, that's our town's motto. Through the trees ahead of us to our left, you may see a glimpse of an impressive stone building. Blind Veterans is a national charity that supports blind ex-servicemen and women towards living an independent life. The building was originally known as Lady Foresters, a convalescent home for the benefit of workers and their families from the iron industry based in Iron Age in Shropshire. Synonymous with Llandudno, and this area of town is known as Llanrose, part of the huge Worcester estate. Coming into view on our left is the pretty little church of St Helen. It stands on the site of a 6th century church. and is the burial place of members of the Mostyn family. Most of the gravestones in the cemetery are black, for the instructions of Lady Wisdom in the 19th century. Lady Wisdom was of temperance and as such, she despised the opposite the church, over to our lands, once stood two public houses, of which I did not want her church to be in such a surroundings, so she had them demolished. Instead, she built first a different house. A little further on, a stone-throwing wooden which was once a school. Cocoa houses were popular in the Victorian hill. It's a way of showing that the temperance need not necessarily deny the social activity of the products and cost. In 1898, the new building was built to replace the ones demolished here. To our right is Bryn Lucas Hill. Bryn is the Welsh word for hill, and Lucas is the Latin conjunction of bull. So basically, it means Mill Hill, named after Hugh Lucas. Back in the 11th century, he was the first Norman Earl of Chester. Well, he favored to the view of William the Conqueror. At the tender age of just 19, he was working in the King of Cheshire and leadership for the Welsh Kings. This brought him earnings, but the lifestyle wasn't like that of Henry VIII. But several centuries later, by history books and referred to Hugh the Welsh, Hugh the cities of his basic because the Welsh are still here today, however. Over to Conwy, above the keys to books. The sea contributed very own beer treatment. This province was built simply as a landmark to the area's culture. Elders invites us to India to see British fashions produce rates and parts in the building. The hotel can be seen more easily than the and indeed, some of the hotels VIP and help. Looking ahead of you now, weather permitting, you will see a spectacular view of Snowdonia. Snowdonia National Park has been a protected landscape for more than 50 years. As we come down the hill, you will catch a sight of Conwy, its castle and quayside, and the river Conwy. Coming up on our right is a pub called the Castle View, formerly called Maggie Murphy's. This name came from a song from the four war veterans that were once housed in this area. A copy of the song still hangs in the bar of the pub. To our right then, you can see the turrets and battlements of Conwy's famous castle, which was built between 1283 and 1287, and commissioned by King Edward I, who took control of the North Wales from the indigenous Welsh. Edward built all our beautiful castles along the North Wales coast, Caernarfon, Cardiff, cricket, and humorous. I'll tell you more about the castle as we approach it shortly. This now is Llandudno Junction, where the main railway line from London Euston runs to Holyhead, at the far side of the Isle of Llambwysar. There, you can catch the ferry to Dublin, the gateway to the Emerald Isle. Ahead of us now is Conwy's magnificent castle. Our first view is of the two eastern towers, and between them, the massive eastern barbican, one of the entrances to the fortress. Conwy's story begins in 1283, the year that King Edward I completed the conquest of Snowdonia, ending the rule of the Welsh princes. Back then, the estimated cost of the castle was £15,000. And it required a workforce of more than 15,000 masons and craftsmen from all over England to complete the project. In total, the castle has 8 towers, originally roofed with shingle or slate. Once completed, the castle walls would have been limewashed or whitewashed, some traces of which can still be seen on its walls today. What an incredible sight this would be! Standing flaming right to the base of the dramatic backdrop of the Snowdonia Mountains. Before we enter Conwy, look to our right and slightly ahead, and you'll see the town's quayside and the end of the terraced houses closest to us. You might spot a little red house, but then again, you might not, for it is in fact the smallest house in Great Britain, just 72 inches high and 122 inches high. So here we are entering the medieval town of Conwy. The castle today looks peaceful enough. The slits of arrow loops in the walls could fire missiles down onto anyone attempting to storm the castle. Today, it's quite a different story, and visitors are now warmly welcomed. We are now This is where you visit if you wish to explore the castle or the magnificent stone walls, or maybe take a stroll along the quayside. Our buses leave from here every 60 minutes. Please check the hour calendar for the time of the buses that will take the platform to Llandudno. If, however, you are leaving soon, it is good that you enjoy the tour and get to thank you for travelling with City Sexy. As we move along, look to our right. On top of the pillar in Lancaster Square is a statue. Shivering Grace, the last great Welsh ruler. As you can see, so please, no standing, and keep arms and hands well inside the bus. We are now briefly outside the town walls in Town Ditch Road, so named because at the base of the walls once lay the town ditch, an open sewer where all manner of rubbish was thrown. The walls are about 1,400 yards in length, with 21 semicircular towers faced out along them. The removable wooden platforms would have spanned the gaps between them, so that in the event of a hostile attack, the platforms could be removed, creating a break in the circuit, isolating those sections that were under siege. Back inside the town walls now in Berry Street, once called Burial Street, because here many of the victims of the plague in 1665 were buried. We see once again the magnificent house. You can just see some of the traces of the limestone wash on the walls. And as we leave Conwy, look to the base of the castle walls at the oblong halls. They were known as latrines, and there are no prizes for guessing what came out of there. Any invader wouldn't dare to attempt to climb up into the castle through those halls. Look to our right, the two bridges. The furthest away from us is a 200-railway bridge, and closest to us is Thomas Telford Railway Bridge. Telford was a brilliant engineer and took great care in building this bridge, including the metal and linseed oil to preserve it. The bridge opened in 1826. The bridge beyond it carries the main railway line, and it was the first of Robert Stephenson's tubular design. Opened in 1848. The wooden bridge was just next to it, opened in 1958. The police was increasing road practicing over for it all back. Movies, technology, free balls, thread all haven't been used, and so they schemes the night to build a road. When we pass over this next bridge, take a look down to the left, and you can see the vehicles disappearing into the tunnel. Construction of this massive project began in 1986, and it is made up of 6 reinforced concrete prefabricated units. A casting basin was created, and the trench for the sections was excavated. The sections were then lowered slowly, one by one, then linked together. Finally, the trench was then filled in, bringing the riverbed back to its original level. It is Britain's first immersed tube tunnel, stretching for 3/4 of a mile and designed to last for 120 years. The single most important role that Conwy played during the Second World War was production of the military army. With the Allies planning the D-Day landings, military chiefs to work out a way of getting all the necessary equipment from the naval vessels moored out at sea across very shallow beaches to the landing ground. It was decided that a floating harbour was needed to be built in sections and then loaded across the channel and assembled on the British beaches. In great secrecy, suitable areas were chosen to build sections of the military hive, and Conwy was included. The area used is now the marina, and as a reminder, the local pubs overlook. Many of the town's hotels and boarding houses were taken over by men working on this project, and in addition, the government billeted many evacuee children in Conwy and the surrounding countryside in the beginning of the war. It was far safer than here in the countryside, rather than in large cities like Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham. On the left, you can see the boats in the marina. There has been a dock here since the 12th century, but a large dock was built in the 1880s to transport by rail the massive amount of high-quality roofing slate quarried at Glenavestinuk, further up the Conwy Valley. In this section, the dock has been transformed into a marina, and this hotel called the Quay after this history. This opened in 2006, and the houses in this area are very well sought after. This is the little town of Victorian. The name means port in River Conwy, and there's been a settlement here since long before Conwy Castle was built. One of the town's dubious claims to fame is that it suffered nearly 100% mortality in the Black Death of 1349. Here is a hop-on, hop-off stop should you wish to explore beach and refreshment opportunities available. Please be aware that this trip is a one-way only, and you will need to re-board the same side of the road as you get off. Is thought to be pre-Welsh. The river is 27 miles long and rises in the heart of Snowdonia beyond picturesque. Despite its normally tranquil appearance, the river's conditions are simple and at times can become quite treacherous. Over to our right is a series of rocky grass hills. This is one of the most historic sites in Llandudno. Originally the site of the 4th century wooden fortress known as the Bar. At that time, North Wales was being invaded by Irish warriors. A northern tribe, the Gododdin, came south to protect the area from the invaders. This tribe was led by a chieftain known as Promenade, and he established his headquarters here at a strategic vantage point in the back. Without Promenade's intervention, North Wales would almost certainly have fallen to the Irish invaders. His descendants went on to become kings of Britain.
and the bloodline would actually be traced to a peasant monarchy that later became the stronghold of King Milgood of Gwynedd, and indeed was part of Wales, appears to have been the capital of Gwynedd at this time. Look slightly over to our left, and in the distance you may be able to see the beautiful sea and Puffin Island, separated from the mainland by the famous Menai Straits. By the shore, you can see My Speed Golf Course, 18-hole course of championship standard. Builds a business, which is basically a finger of land pointing out to the sea, and it has a west shore and a north. If you look ahead of you and above the rooftops, you can see the most distinctive landmark in town, the Great Wall, a huge lump of Carboniferous limestone, some 300 million years old. In the 3rd century, the Romans passing forth originally discovered these fortress, which is found the wall to be a great source of copper, and some of the copper mines are still here, although no longer used. After the Romans and the Vikings also mined for or is a Viking word meaning seafront, sea. There are 2 fantastic ways to visit the Great Wall, either on a vintage coach tour around the Marine Drive or open-top mini coach tour, which takes in both the Marine Drive as well as its summit. These both operate daily from the pier bus stop where our tour ends. Llandudno is Wales's largest resort and is very much the product of the Victorian era. It came into existence primarily for tours during the mid-19th century, though as left structures here dating to at least 3000 BC. For the last 100 years or so, it's turned out to be the queen of the North Wales residents. These fascinating communities of the parents of the Victorian period remain very different out of the communities. With the Welsh name of church, Tidmouth comes from the name of the 6th century monk Saint Tidmouth, who founded a church in the Great Wall, bringing Christianity to the area. This whole church naturally dedicated to Saint Tidmouth. So basically, Saint Tidmouth means the church of Tidmouth. This building is home to Mr. Charles Pepper. He came to fame as the designer of the Royal Air Force in Sydney. There was much conjecture at the time as to the identity of the third Mrs. Seafront. Many people believe that there was always something else. Some years later, Charles Pepper was sure they stuck to the pictures from the National Museum. Near us here once stood the Ben Moraba Hotel, originally a private house built in 1862 for the very Reverend Henry Hillider, Dean of Christchurch in Oxford. The girl stayed here during college breaks with his family, his retinue of servants, and important and privileged guests. One of Liddell's daughters was called Alice, and this is the Alice on which Lewis Carroll based the famous character in Alice in Wonderland and Alice in the Looking Glass. This is the West Shore, described in golden sand overlooking Conwy Bay. This is a English spot athletes, water sports enthusiasts, and especially walkers, as the Wales coastal outlands right along the shore. There is a boating lake, Conwy and tourist facilities for those listening to Wartime. It's the best to look down to the little island on our left. This is our bus stop for the West Shore. If you are leaving here, check with your driver for the time of later buses. The circular glass building here is another relic from Victorian times. It was built as a shelter and waiting room for the tram system that operated here between 1907 and 1956. The trams transported local townsfolk and holiday makers around Llandudno, and they could even travel further afield too, as far east as Conwy Bay. Much of the original tramway still exists, although modern streets have now largely covered them over. One family has dominated the wide promenade well over 100 years, and no holiday or even day out for Conwy would be complete without visit to Cottonman's Ranch and Juice. Richard Cottonman arrived here in his horse-drawn gypsy caravan in 1863. During his stay, one of his horses died suddenly, leaving him and his younger son. So Richard spent his time whittling driftwood from the beach, and whilst doing this, had the idea of carving heads and doing a Punch and Judy show, something he had seen during his travels. And remarkably, it's still operated by Richard Codman's descendants. This is the stop of 10 Berlin Bristol, the Old Museum. On our right now is the J.B. Wetherspoon Public House. Stands on the original site of the town's market hall. Later, it became the Palladium Theatre. And if you take a closer look at this splendidly restored and renovated building, you can see how it resembles the famous London Palladium. I do hope you have enjoyed your tour of Llandudno and Conwy. Thank you for joining us, and of course, many thanks to our driver. Remember to hold on to your tickets, as they will allow you a discount off any other sightseeing tour either here in the UK or on any of our tours worldwide. If you are staying with us to continue the tour, we will be departing again very shortly. Diolch yn fawr iawn am dewis City Sightseeing. Gobeithio chi gysiwne i o'ch girls adre. Thank you again for choosing City Sightseeing today, and I wish you a safe journey home.